functions vis-a-vis their modus operandi in ensuring that you confine to this function of the NDLEA?
NDLEA has many functions.
Okay.
One of the functions of NDLEA is counseling of drug users, in conducting enlightenment program so that members of the public will know that there are a lot of adverse consequences, dangers in the use of drug. NDLEA also prosecutes offenders. If someone is found in possession or he is caught dealing in drugs or trafficking in drugs, importing drugs or exporting drugs, the person must be arrested, investigated, and prosecuted. And upon conviction, most of the properties he has or he procured with the process of drugs will be forfeited to the federal government.
Okay, now as the Assistant State Commander, Prosecution and Legal Services of the NDLEA Delta State Command, does NDLEA operatives have a need for a warrant in order to effect an arrest? Because we've seen several times, because sometimes these have been issues that have been raised in the society, that NDLEA operatives just bump into a place, arrest, sometimes it's said, innocent citizens. Do you really have to have a warrant of arrest before you go on making arrest?
No. NDLEA does not need warrants,
okay,
to effect an arrest. If you look at Section 41 of the NDLEA Act, it says that an NDLEA officer without warrants upon reasonable suspicion can arrest any person found committing an offense or suspected to have committed an offense. And the NDLEA card, the identity card of an NDLEA officer, gives him power of ingress and egress. That is the right to go into any premises, conduct search, arrest persons, and to also get out of such premises after successful completion of the operation.
All right, definitely, like we just established, the NDLEA is in the forefront in combating drug abuse. Now, my next question is, are there consequences of dealing controlled drugs without lawful permission? Are there consequences for someone to deal with controlled drug without permission?
Yes, there are a lot of consequences.
Okay.
If you dealt in or you deal in any of the controlled drugs, you will be arrested when you don't have permission. You cannot, the only person licensed to deal in such drugs are pharmacists. But there are regulations that every pharmacist knows that he has limited area of operation. He can only dispense upon prescription by a medical practitioner.
Okay. Now, can you give us an example of these controlled drugs that actually need lawful permission?
Like tramadol,
okay,
codeine, pentazocine, cocaine, MSD, that is lysergic acid diclamide,
okay,
heroin, methamphetamine, and so on and so forth.
the names are really mind-blowing, and of course those are the names of the controlled drugs. Now, who is permitted to deal on controlled psychotropics? Just let us know what psychotropic drugs are about and those that are actually permitted to deal on them.
Psychotropic substances are substances that affect the central nervous system, that is the brain. Any drug that affects the brain is a psychoactive substance. It's a psychotropic substance. and nobody is allowed to deal in it except pharmacists. And pharmacies, probably somebody is to be operated upon, and there may be need to use cocaine. Upon such proper prescription, a pharmacist may sell.
So now you just made us to understand that a pharmacist have access to psychotropic drugs, and of course, are there different punishments under the act for people who deals on cannabis sativa, and of course you also mentioned cocaine, and of course codeine, and what can you just enlighten us on this?
It depends. For instance, there are various offenses under the act. And every offense carries its own punishment. Possession and dealing are alternative offenses. If you are found in possession of cannabis sativa, cocaine, codeine, you should look at section 11B of the Ndlea Act. Says that any person who is found in possession shall be liable upon conviction to a term of imprisonment of not less than 15 years. The same thing is what section 19 of the Ndlea Act says. But section 11A, which talks about importation of drugs, manufacturing of drugs, production of drugs, or cultivation of drugs, if somebody is convicted either on exportation, importation, section 11B talks about exportation.
Right.
I don't understand. So if you are caught, the punishment is life imprisonment.
Okay.
But if it is possession, the punishment is not less than 15 years and not more than 25 years.
Okay, possession could possession be that the person at the time he was caught is with it, or probably he is closer to the place?
Well, there are basically two types of possessions in law: actual possession and constructive possession.
Okay. If,
for instance, you bought drugs and you have an agent, or your boy, your sales boy, you gave it to him, and upon investigation it was discovered you were the person who gave to him. You are not in actual possession. Your boy is in actual possession, but you are constructively in possession.
Right.
So the law will deal with you very disastrously.
Indeed. Like I do say, the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, Ndlea, are in the forefront of ensuring that we sanitize Nigeria in terms of drug abuse, and of course illicit smuggling of illicit drugs both outside and into Nigeria or outside Nigeria. Now, what are the different punishments, like you rightly mentioned? What is the fate of someone who is arrested smoking? Like, for instance, we've seen sometimes your men, they storm into a particular place, and some of these persons say they were just there smoking when they were arrested. And on the long run, we will see a situation whereby someone say they are innocent of the accusation of being of the arrest, and they were just there coincidentally, and that was how they were picked up. Now, what do you think should be the fate of such person, or is the person also liable?
Well, it depends on the scenario. Based on the scenario you just painted, somebody was found smoking at the scene of crime, and some other persons by coincidence were found at the scene of crime. Now, the person found smoking at the scene of crime is a user of drugs, and internationally such a person is seen as a sick person that requires help. He may be rehabilitated and integrated back into the society so that he will become a useful member of the society.
Okay. Now, talking about...
but somebody who is found at the scene of crime, that is why after every arrest there must be investigation.
Okay.
If in the course of the investigation it was discovered that the person is innocent, he will be freed.
So there will be no charges
He
against
cannot be charged.
even though he was caught maybe probably smoking in that area.
No, that's if he is caught smoking
in that area.
That person is
especially smoking substandard, let's say cannabis sativa, popularly called Igbo.
Yes, section 11D of the Ndlea Act looks at such a person as a user.
Okay.
And internationally, the current trend is that users of drugs are treated as sick persons.
All right.
Who need help. They may be rehabilitated and brought back into the society as normal persons.
Okay. So you were prosecuted.
But if someone is found at the scene of crime by coincidence and the investigation finds him not culpable, the investigation says that, oh, this man did not commit any offense, they will only want him to leave before he leaves and allow him to go because he has not done anything contrary to the law.
Okay. All right. Of course, we are still here with ACN Afum Paulinus Obeta, the Assistant State Commander, Prosecution and Legal Services of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, Delta State Command. We'll be right back after this brief. You're welcome back to Inside the Ndlea, a program that is geared towards creating awareness on the objectives and mission of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency. And of course, still with me here in the studio is ACN Afum Paulinus Obeta. And of course, I will try to x-ray the act that established the Ndlea, and of course also the function of the act, and if the Ndlea, must they have a warrant arrest before they could prosecute any arrest. And of course, our guest here, Afum Obeta, have actually set the tone and of course enlightened us that the Ndlea doesn't need to have any warrant of arrest before they could initiate any arrest. And of course, he also went on to explain to us what are psychotropic drugs and the effect it has. Now my question to you now, ACN, is what is the legal implication for a person that is in possession of a luggage that contains an illicit drugs? We've seen situations, scenarios whereby your men, they are on stop and search, and somebody they say this bag belongs to this particular passenger, only for the passenger to say this was not my bag. Probably somebody has exchanged my bag on the road. And now, if we are faced with such scenario, what is the fate of such person?
Anyway, the law has made everything clear. If someone is found in possession of a bag, probably there was a mistaken identity. His bag was displaced, and another person, a man took the bag that does not belong to him or her, and the person is charged for possession. One of the elements of the offense of possession is knowledge.
Okay.
If he pleads that in his defense, and the court discovers that actually he was not aware of the content of the said bag, probably somebody gave to him to give to another person, and he wasn't aware of the content, the court will free the person.
Okay.
Because knowledge, he was not aware. Then again, it depends. If somebody gives you a bag and you were arrested at the airport, you do not know the content of the bag, and you are charged for exportation. Because the law is that any person who takes any type of drug or any bag containing drug to any customs area, customs station, airport or seaport, once you are caught there, you are guilty of exportation. Because this is a strict liability offense. This particular offense does not require mens rea, that is guilty mind, before the person can be convicted. Knowledge is absent, and so the person can be convicted because it is a strict liability offense. Yes. So it depends on the offense a person is charged for.
All right, talking about you just try to set, and I'm trying to digress a bit. Going to the transport companies, we've seen situation whereby some transporters have been arrested for falling prey to this. At the pickup station, they said, Mr. A gave me this to deliver. And just like what you rightly say, sometimes they are not permitted to open the package. And of course, they load them into the vehicle and off they go. And sometimes when they come across your men on the road and they do stop and search, they find out that this drug contains an illicit drug. So in situation like this, what happens to logistics companies, especially now most of them, they don't have to open the package before moving it to, or rather conveying it to the recipients?
Well, it depends on it is the investigation that determines what happens. But if the owner of a logistics company, which is a commercial carrier, section 27 and 32 of the Ndlea Act looks at it as a commercial carrier. So if such a person is carrying drugs and the driver probably was aware of that there were drugs inside the said vehicle, but the owners of the company is not aware, the manager of the company is not aware, the director is not aware, the secretary is not aware, then the law is that so the vehicle should be released to the owner or to the logistics company. And the driver will be held because he was aware of what was inside the listing. But if that is why there is a duty, if you look at the section 24 and 25 of the Ndlea Act, every logistic company has a duty to ensure that his staff or the people working for the company are well trained. So they have a duty to ensure that there is due diligence. If they fail to conduct due diligence and their vehicle is arrested, it raises presumption of connivance. But it is the investigation that will clear the air one way or the other. If in the course of the investigation the owners of the company are indicted, they will all go in for it, and the company will be wound up, and all the properties that belong to the company will be forfeited to the federal government of Nigeria.
Indeed, this is actually a lesson to all logistics companies, and of course, just like what ACN or better just rightly said, they should always check what their passenger or customers are giving to them to deliver, either from one point to the other, to avoid your company being seized or better wound up, and everything you have labored for given to the federal government. All right, now that is on the logistic aspect on transportation. Now we've seen a situation where men of the Ndlea have gone to seal off building properties, landed properties that probably they find out that some there are kind of activities of illicit drugs and of course drug abuse going on in such property. Now, what is the fate of the owner of such property, knowing fully well sometimes these persons just use that place without the knowledge of the owner. Why sometimes, like you just said, investigation, does it mean that this owner is going to also forfeit that property if if your men find out that that particular place is being used as a hideout or as a means of transporting or moving drugs?
Thank you so much. Section 12 of the Ndlea Act says that any owner or occupier of a premises that allows his or her premises to be used for sale of drugs or for dealing in drugs, that the owner, the property is liable to forfeiture, and the owner will be prosecuted and also convicted.
Okay.
But if the owner of a house gave his house to a tenant and the tenant deceived him or did not tell him the use into which he wanted to put his property, and the investigation discovered that the owner was not aware, the property will be released to him, and the person who is caught doing the act will be dealt with according to the law. He will be prosecuted, convicted, and sentenced accordingly.
What about like uncompleted building? In the case of uncompleted building being used, what is the fate of the owner of such property?
Yes, if an uncompleted building is being used and the owner of the uncompleted building ought to have exercised due diligence, he must have checked the person he gave his house. If he gave out the house to be used by another person for some businesses, and he was aware that one of the businesses is drug, then he will go in for it. But if he was not aware, and some people just entered into his premises, probably he stays abroad, he did not know what was happening in his property, the law will free him.
Okay. All right, talking about, and that brings me to one interesting question everybody will actually want you to talk about, and that is the growing of cannabis sativa in some villages. You know, definitely we've seen videos of your men storming villages to destroy farmlands that are being used to cultivate cannabis sativa. Now the question is, what is the implication of the villager, particularly the traditional ruler of such village, having knowledge of existence of cannabis sativa in his domain, cannabis sativa farmland in his domain? What is the knowledge? What is the faith of such traditional ruler, and of course the villagers in general?
It depends. To have knowledge is one thing.
Okay.
To benefit
from it
another. So if a traditional ruler is away, the ideal thing for him to do is to go and report to appropriate security agencies who will conduct proper surveillance with a view to discovering whether the information gotten from the traditional ruler is correct or not. If they discover there is nothing, they will embark on operation, and all the people found in the farmland will be arrested and the farm destroyed. They will also be investigated and prosecuted according to the law. But if the traditional ruler had from someone that people are living in there somewhere, that amounts to hearsay. If he did not do anything that is against the law will not hold him or her open.
Okay. All right, of course, we're talking about the growing of cannabis sativa in farmlands, and what now we do know that drug business, let me use the word, they said is a serious business, and of course a lot of persons that have gone into this, they don't want to get out of it because of the money that is involved, and of course the money they will be able to get from the sales, and of course shipment of drugs both within and outside the country. Now, what happens to the seized properties of drug offenders? Their wealth, their cars, their mansion. Is it that the NDLEA take it to themselves, or what happened to them, or is being shared among the various officers in the NDLEA?
Well, There is a maxim when we were studying law in those days that be you any person, the law is above you.
Right.
So the law has made adequate provisions for everything. If somebody's property is attached and forfeited to the federal government of Nigeria, for instance, in NDLEA, when we, in the course of investigation, we attach somebody's property, somebody who was found committing an offense. If we now discover that his lifestyle and the extent of properties are not commensurate with his ostensible source of income, that triggers off serious investigation into his assets. And upon conclusion of the investigation, the properties will be forfeited to the federal government of Nigeria.
Right.
Then when we forfeit, after forfeiture, then this takes us to another step. We will now advertise the auction. The NDLEA may decide now to auction.
Okay.
And before the auction, it will be advertised to the whole world. And it will be auctioned according to the law by licensed auctioneers. It doesn't go to NDLEA officers, but interested Nigerians may benefit from that.
Okay. All right. Let's quickly have a brief we'll be right back with Assistant Commander of Narcotics, Afum Paulinus Obeta, who is the Assistant State Commander, Prosecution and Legal Services, Ndlea Delta State Command.
No.
All right, so we're still talking about what happened to the seized properties. Right, we are still with the Assistant Commander of Narcotics, Afum Paulinus Obeta of the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, Delta State Command. And of course, we are just discussing about what happens to the property of a drug dealer. And of course, he has been able to establish that the federal government takes over the property, especially when the person is found guilty and of course prosecuted. And also he went for that to also explain to us that such properties also, if they could be auctioned in line with the constitution and of course the rules that guides the auctioning in Nigeria. And now what the question is, there are reports of your men being mobbed and of course attacked during operation, and of course we will see a lot of them. There was actually a scenario right in Asaba, precisely some years ago, and which caused some uproar between your men and the community. Now, is there any act that guides or protects your men from being attacked? And of course, what is the fate of those persons that attack your men in the course of in the discharge of their duties?
Well, that amounts to duty of obstruction. Once the other officers embark on an operation and any person decides to stop their work, either by way of attack or any similar untoward action, such persons may be arrested.
Right.
And by virtue of Section 49 of the Ndlea Act, which talks about duty of obstruction, there will be a trial according to the law, and if found culpable, they will be convicted and sentenced accordingly.
All right, we've seen especially attacks on your men at Abbey, a community, and of course Orogun, and of course vis-a-vis many other places. Now,
just a few days ago, our our officers went for an operation in Kwale and its environs. They were attacked and their vehicles smashed. But because they were gallant enough, they were able to effect the arrest of some of them. And currently they are undergoing prosecution.
All right, so we do know that the National Drug Law Enforcement Agency, Ndlea, have been the forefront in ensuring that the war against drug abuse and of course the WADA they call it. How have your agency so far in Delta State been able to push this war against drug abuse, especially to schools and of course public places?
We make it a point of duty because we have various area commands. All the area commands ensure that there is a sensitization program going on in their respective commands. We create awareness. We allow the members of the public to know that the use of drug does not pay. Instead, it has adverse consequences, which may be physical, psychological, or social. So that campaign is being carried out at periodic intervals to the nooks and crannies of the states.
So far, it has been the maiden edition of Inside the Ndlea with the Assistant Commander of Narcotics, Afon Paulinus Obeta. Finally, before I will leave the studio, what is your advice to drug dealers and of course those that are indulging in drug abuse?
My advice to them is that everybody should be very careful, should run away from drugs because it does not pay. Because if you are caught, both the properties you procured with genuine resources and those you got with from the illicit business, all the properties may go. And two, if you are caught, you may be sentenced to life imprisonment. And all your wife and children may be, so if care is not taken, the person may even die there. So the drug does not pay. It doesn't pay and it creates bad image in the society. So I will appeal to people to desist from the use of drugs as it is very dangerous.
Right. And of course you rightly hear from the Assistant Commander of Narcotics of the Ndlea Delta State Delta State Command rather. And of course he said drug does not pay. Stay away from drug, stay clean, and of course stay away from anything that will dent your image. And don't forget that he also did establish that they don't see those that are into drugs, drug abuse, as people that should be thrown out of the society, but they try to rehabilitate them and push them back into the society. So if peradventure you're still into drug abuse, it's actually right for you to actually take a cue and of course stop it. And of course if you cannot do it, just meet the Ndlea. They will help you to rehabilitate you and of course help you come out of it, because that is why this agency is being set up. Of course, this is the size of our package today for Inside the Ndlea. I am Henry Usiayo, your host, and of course, thank you very much, ACN Afon Obeta, for coming around. I know the next time I'll be hoping to see you more on this show. All right,
thank you very much.
So this is the much we can take on today's edition. Hope to see you next week, same time, same station. Bye for now.